Feller once told me about a weed they got down here. They call it loco weed. Said when the cows and horses eat it, they lose their minds, get wilder than anything you've seen. Strange how life can do the same to people. Just ask Dirk Blocker. Dirk was only 14 years old in 1972 when his father, the beloved Bonanza star Dan Blocker, died suddenly. That loss hit hard, but Dirk kept his pain buried deep. For over 5 decades, he stayed silent about what it really felt like to lose his father at the height of fame. Now, at 67, he's finally opening up, and what he's revealing has stunned even longtime fans. Known today for his role on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Dirk shares what it was really like growing up as the son of Hoss Cartwright, the mobs of fans that followed them, the childhood moments missed, and the quiet, often heartbreaking truth behind his own acting journey. His memories shed a very different light on a man America thought they knew. Dan Blocker wasn't just born, he arrived like a thunderclap. On December 10, 1928, in the small town of DeKalb, Texas, Dan tipped the scales at an astonishing 14 pounds. It was such a remarkable birth, it set a county record. Even the doctor got flustered, writing Bobby Dawn instead of Bobby Dan on the birth certificate. His mother, Mary, endured what was likely one of the most painful deliveries in Bowie County history. And his father, Shah, couldn't have imagined that this enormous baby boy would one day become a giant, not just in stature, but in American television. That legendary birth was talked about for years. No one broke Dan's record until very recently. When he was 6, the family moved to the farming town of O'Donnell, Texas, still reeling from tragedy. Just a year earlier, Dan's older sister Virginia had died of pneumonia at age 11. Dan was only 5 when it happened. Despite the heartbreak, the Blockers carried on. Shah opened a grocery store, and the family lived in the back. Dan bagged groceries and hauled 40-pound feed sacks before most kids learned cursive. The town was small, just 3,000 people, 2 lumberyards, 2 pharmacies, 2 doctors. But Dan was unforgettable, even then. His size made him stand out, but it was his relentless work ethic that earned respect. By age 10, Dan stood 5 feet tall and weighed 105 pounds. 2 years later, he was already 6 feet and 200 pounds. Other kids couldn't keep up, and neither could many grown men. Dan worked alongside them on grain trucks, in elevators, wherever muscle was needed. On Saturday nights, Main Street was roped off so Dan could box older boys. At 13, he was taking on men in their 20s. He never lost. There's even a story that he once lifted a car off someone when it slipped off a jack. True or not, no one doubted that Dan Blocker could do it. By high school, he was 6 feet 4 inches, 275 pounds, with size 14.5 feet. His father used to joke, too big to ride, too small to pull a wagon, not much use at all. But that useless size was about to make Dan a household name. At 12, Dan's parents sent him to the Texas Military Institute in San Antonio, hoping some structure would mold him into more than just a large body. It worked. That same school had trained General Douglas MacArthur. Dan soaked in discipline, order, and grit. After TMI, he enrolled at Hardin-Simmons University in 1946. Football came naturally to him. At 18, he was built like a tank and respected like a veteran. But it wasn't football that changed his life, it was a play. At Sul Ross State, he volunteered to help backstage for Arsenic and Old Lace. All they needed was someone strong to lift fake corpses. Dan agreed. Something clicked. The moment he stepped into the theater world, watching actors rehearse, seeing a story come alive, Dan knew. He changed his major from physical education to drama. Football faded, acting took over. He still played ball. But the stage, that's where Dan found purpose. He worked rodeos. He bounced at bars. He did whatever it took to pay tuition. And his performances revealed a surprising gentleness that few expected from a man his size. He graduated in 1950 with a degree in speech and drama. Pro football teams and boxing promoters came calling. Dan turned them all down. He didn't want to use his fists or size to earn a living. He wanted to pursue something deeper. That same year, he moved to Boston to perform in Summer Stock Theater, 2,000 miles from home, no safety net. He acted in plays for almost no pay, learning lines overnight, playing roles back to back. He was exhausted but fulfilled. Then, everything changed again. In November 1950, The army drafted him into the Korean War. At 6 feet 4 inches, 250+ pounds, they struggled just to find boots that fit. After basic training, he was sent to Japan, then to the Korean front. He joined F Company, 2nd Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Division. They nicknamed him the Big Un. The fighting was brutal. On Christmas Eve 1951, he and his men were pinned down for 10 hours on Hill 255. Then came May 25th, 1952, a bloody defense of Hill 200 that left 6 Americans dead and 21 wounded. Dan was shot while rescuing wounded comrades. He earned a Purple Heart. What he saw in Korea haunted him. When he returned home, he became an outspoken critic of war, particularly Vietnam. He didn't want American bombs dropped on innocent civilians, not after what he had seen. But the war also revealed another side of Dan leadership. Come under fire, trusted, respected. He earned numerous medals, including the Korean Service Medal and the Combat Infantryman Badge. When his service ended in September 1952, he married the love of his life, Dolia Lee Parker, and returned to college to earn his master's in drama. He taught high school English and drama in Sonora, Texas. His students never forgot how his voice echoed through the halls when he recited Shakespeare. Later, he taught 6th grade in Carlsbad, New Mexico, still chasing his acting dream. Then came the twist of fate. During a vacation to Hollywood, Dan stopped at a phone booth, dressed in cowboy gear. A talent agent noticed the towering man and didn't need a single line. He saw a star. Meanwhile, Dan's wife and kids waited in the station wagon, unaware that everything was about to change. Hollywood in the late 50s was hungry for cowboy stories. Dan looked like he was the frontier, but he didn't rush into acting. In 1956, he moved to LA to pursue a PhD at UCLA. He supported his family by substitute teaching in Glendale. With 4 kids, including Dirk, born in 1957, life was full, but he kept working. His first film role, a monster named the Goon, in a Three Stooges short called Outer Space Jitters. From there, roles piled up: Sheriff of Cochise, Gunsmoke, Have Gun, Will Travel, The Rifleman. He was always a tough guy, but never just muscle. Then came Maverick, where he played the comically tough Hognose Hughes. Audiences loved it. That performance led to Bonanza. When producers developed the show in 1959, they didn't even audition anyone else for Hoss Cartwright. They knew Blocker was the role. The show didn't start strong, sitting at number 45 in the ratings. But with time, it became a beloved American staple. And Dan, he became larger than life. But it was Dan Blocker's performance that started to shift everything. At first, Bonanza struggled to find its footing. But thanks in large part to Blocker, things began to change. Slowly, the series climbed the charts, gaining momentum season by season. A few years later, it wasn't just a hit, it became the most watched show on American television. Yet, Blocker's character, Hoss, wasn't originally meant to be taken seriously. In the early scripts, he was a joke, the big, slow guy who packed a punch but didn't have much to say. A comic relief. He was written to be simple, even dim-witted. But Dan Blocker was anything but. He stood 6 feet 4 inches and weighed over 300 pounds, by the later seasons, closer to 365. And yet, behind that towering frame was a man with a master's degree in dramatic arts. He had taught English, had planned to earn a PhD, and brought all of that depth into the role. Instead of playing Hoss as a punchline, Blocker made him thoughtful, kind, and deeply human. And the writers noticed. The character began to evolve. Hoss transformed from a one-dimensional figure into the very heart of the show. By the time Bonanza reached its 3rd season and hit number 2 in the ratings, audiences had fallen in love with him. Hoss wasn't just muscle anymore. He had become the show's moral compass, the one who reminded viewers what the Cartwrights were really fighting for. But while Hoss lit up the screen, the work behind the scenes was grueling. Unlike today's TV schedules, which typically produce 10 or 12 episodes a year, Bonanza was churning out over 30 episodes annually. That meant 5 days a week, 14-hour days, nearly nonstop. Dan Blocker was on set by 7 a.m., not leaving until 9 at night. The heat, the thick costumes, the horseback riding, the stunts, it was punishing, especially for a man his size. There were days when the heat overwhelmed him and he'd pass out. But he kept going. He later said he saw his TV family more than his real one, his wife and 4 children. By the time 1972 arrived, Blocker had filmed 415 episodes, a schedule that would break most actors today. And what makes his story so bittersweet is what he gave up for all of it. Before Hollywood, he had a very different vision for his life, not fame but education. After earning his master's degree in Texas, he was on track for a PhD. But the demands of acting, scripts, long days on set, constant interviews consumed everything. By 1961, he had put his doctoral studies on hold, and he never got the chance to return. He would later admit that not finishing his PhD was his greatest regret. Still, what he gave to television and to millions of viewers can't be overstated. Hoss wasn't just a cowboy with a kind soul. He was a character that made people feel something. By the mid-60s, studies showed that audiences saw Hoss as the emotional center of Bonanza. Blocker once said he played Hoss with a single quote in mind: "He made us laugh. He made us better." And for 9 consecutive years, Bonanza remained in the top 5 shows on television, something no other series had achieved at the time. And it wasn't just an American phenomenon. The Cartwright family reached homes in nearly 50 countries, from Canada and Brazil to France, Thailand, and even Saudi Arabia. It wasn't until 1967 that CBS finally introduced a show that could compete, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Before that, not even the Judy Garland show could make a dent. But Dan Blocker's impact went beyond the screen. In 1963, he took the money he earned from TV fame and started a real business, a restaurant chain called Bonanza Steakhouse. At its peak, there were around 600 locations. Though it merged with Ponderosa in 1997 and only around 75 remained by 2019, Blocker had done something rare. He turned TV stardom into something tangible, a place where fans could literally sit down and taste his legacy. He also made a mark in film. In 1963, Blocker starred in Come Blow Your Horn with Frank Sinatra, a Neil Simon comedy that grossed $12.7 million and became one of the year's top box office hits. By 1968, he had built a solid film career while still committed to Bonanza. And yet, despite his fame, Blocker never let it change his core. He had married Delphia Parker back in 1952 after meeting in college, and they stayed together until his death. Their son David became a successful producer, winning an Emmy in 1998. Their other son, Dennis Dirk Blocker, followed in his father's footsteps and became an actor. Even those who worked with him saw the man behind the fame. Mitch Vogel, who played Jamie on Bonanza, said Dan Blocker was the kind of guy you could just go have a beer with. He was, to everyone around him, the friendly giant. But behind that ever-present smile, something darker was happening. In 1972, Dan underwent what was supposed to be a routine gallbladder surgery. But medicine wasn't what it is today. His size made the operation more dangerous, and complications followed. Just hours after surgery, Blocker suffered a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in his lungs. He couldn't breathe. A code blue rang out. Nurses rushed the halls. Doctors did everything they could, but it wasn't enough. Dan Blocker died on May 13, 1972, at just 43 years old. Only 2 months before, he had been cast in a new role by legendary director Robert Altman, a part that could have redefined his career. Altman was devastated by the loss and later included a tribute in the film's credits, in remembrance of Dan Blocker. A single line, but one that carried the weight of everyone's grief. Bonanza was already deep into its 13th season when Blocker died. It had been a staple of American television for over a decade. But with Hoss gone, something vital was missing. Ratings nosedived. Viewers felt the loss just as much as the cast and crew. As producer Richard Collins put it, just as we personally suffered a loss, so the audience suffered one too. In 1973, after 14 seasons and 431 episodes, Bonanza aired its final show. In the quiet town of O'Donnell, Texas, where Blocker was born, a memorial still stands. It's not a big city, you could drive through it without noticing. But in the middle of it, on a quiet corner, is a bronze bust of Dan Blocker, the man the world knew as Hoss Cartwright. It was unveiled on July 4th, 1973, just 14 months after his death. The plaque says it all. Born at a staggering 14 pounds, the largest baby ever recorded in Bowie County, Dan Blocker's life story was as outsized as his presence. And today, as you drive into O'Donnell on Highway 87, a giant mural greets you, his smiling face painted across a barn, a tribute to a gentle giant. His son, Dirk, born in Los Angeles in 1957, grew up with one foot in Hollywood and the other in a very different reality. He acted in MASH*, The X-Files, and later starred as Detective Hitchcock in Brooklyn Nine-Nine for 147 episodes from 2013 to 2021. For a whole new generation, Dirk became a star in his own right, not just Hoss's son, but a talented comic actor with his own legacy. But Dirk has never forgotten. He's spoken about what it was like growing up with a father loved by millions and the strange feeling of seeing him on TV while missing him at home. That kind of dual reality shaped him, and the values his father lived by stayed with him. Because Dan Blocker wasn't just a TV star. He was a teacher at heart, a family man, and a symbol of kindness and strength. His legacy wasn't just written in scripts or ratings. It lives on in every person who remembers Hoss Cartwright, not as a sidekick, but as the soul of a show, and the man who gave everything to make it real.